Well,
Hello.
hi, Lisa. I'm Kristen. How are you?
I am fine, and how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are very excited to have Lisa Fipps join us to talk about her book, Starfish, which is her first novel. And just in January, a few weeks ago, she was honored with the Michael Printz Honor Award for excellence in young adult literature. So we are super excited about that. The staff here loves the book. One of us read it, then we passed it around, and we're like, okay. So many of us have read it and really just think it's an amazingly beautiful book. Very touching, very emotional, and we can't say enough good things about it. So thank you for joining us tonight, Lisa.
It's my honor. I love New Jersey. I've been there several times.
Oh, good. We are in South Jersey. Next time you come, please look us up. We would love to have you stop by. So I'm going to start with a question just to kind of lead into this, and then I will let you talk, and then we can go into questions and answers later. The Printz Honor Award. How did you find out? How did you feel? Are you still recovering from that? Can you tell us about that?
Oh my gosh. So this is where I get to explain just how big of a dork I am. So thank you for making sure it's recorded for prosperity. So on Martin Luther King Day, which was January 17th, I get a call from my agent, Lisa Fipps, who's amazing. And she's like, hey, I just got on the phone with Nancy Polson, and Nancy Polson is my editor. Nancy Polson Books, part of Penguin Random House. And Nancy Polson is a genius, by the way. And she said, we need to meet and talk about, maybe how we could have some kind of marketing campaign for the paperback. And by the way, total fib, because the paperback's not coming out anytime. It's not even anywhere near there. But anyway, I didn't know that at the time. And, you do what they tell you in this business. I just write books and then they tell me what to do. So, excuse me, I'm getting over bronchitis. So they said, we're going to meet at 5:20 tomorrow. And I thought, that's kind of weird. Normally like at 5:30, whatever. And so I get on the Zoom, and my stupid computer wasn't working. I had to install the drive. I didn't have time. It wasn't downloading, blah, blah, blah. So I used my phone. I put it in the O-ring light, and they didn't give me like a link to this Zoom meeting. It was just like a number to punch in. And I punch in the number, and when on the screen, I do not see Liza. I do not see Nancy. I see people I have never seen before. And so I'm muted and I'm miming, sorry. And so I quickly hit leave, and my button wasn't working. So I hit 18,000 times. And so I get back out and I'm like, okay, Lisa, calm down, type in the numbers carefully, get it right this time. Do it again. And I come back and it's the same people. And I'm miming again. I'm so sorry. And because I'm thinking I've hacked into someone's virtual book club or something, and they're going to report me to Zoom for hacking in. I'll never be able to use Zoom the rest of my life. This is how I think. And so I grabbed my other cell phone, I have two, and I grabbed it and I started to text Nancy Polson and say, hey, I've got the wrong link. And she texts me back, and she texts me at the same time I'm trying to text her. And she's like, it's the right link. Come back. And I'm like, okay, so these must be people from Penguin that I've never met, and they've decided to join us, right? So I'm like, okay. So I get in there, and people are kind of giggling and laughing because, I'm always making an idiot of myself somehow. And so I'm used to people laughing. And so, and they were like, hi, the members of the Michael L. Printz Award. And, we have wanted to talk to you. Your book has been selected as a Michael Printz Honor book. And I went, I literally just smacked myself. And so I'm sitting there like an idiot. And I felt so out of water and fish out of water. And so, and they're, saying all these beautiful things about my book. And I just kept going. you know, and then finally I got some thank yous out. And then I was like, okay, I'm a director of marketing for a living, which you would have never known that night. So I'm like, put that brain on, and I'm like, okay, you need to have some kind of like thank you kind of saying, like other than the words thank you. And so I finally got my verbal capacity back and said, thank you and da, 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 da. And then someone from Pingman over marketing like jumped in, yes, and everything. And then Nancy and Liza and all of the Printz committee was like, yeah, that was kind of funny. And Nancy's like, I think we fibbed a little too well with Lisa about getting her to this meeting. And that's how I found out. And then they're like, yeah, you can't. So that was the Tuesday, the 18th. And I couldn't tell anybody. And so the announcement was on Monday, the 24th. So I had almost a solid week of trying to keep that a secret. And so I did tell my very, very, very best friend under threat of, corporal punishment. And so we kept that a secret because I couldn't say.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we talked on the phone and we listened to, and believe it or not, he sent a link to a song by Celebration by Kool and the Gang. And so I listened to that all night long. And so it was a fun night. I actually celebrated more on the 18th than I did on the 24th.
Well, that's fantastic and certainly very memorable, right?
For all involved.
Definitely. But just so you know, you're not alone on the nerdy. We librarians get up on that Monday when the awards are announced and watch it from wherever we are so we can listen and hear who the winners are. So
yeah, and normally that's my job. Yeah, normally that's part of my job as a director of marketing is to watch it and make these announcements on our social media as they go. And I was like, I'm going to need to take that day off. And I didn't tell them why, and then it was funny. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. How about I turn it over to you and let you tell us what you'd like to tell us about Starfish. And then I do have questions and we can take questions from our viewers.
Excellent.
So if you want to do some readings, talk about whatever.
All right. It's always kind of a scary thing for you to just let me do what I want to do because, as my story just illustrated, I can be a little off the beaten path. But so, yep, this is Starfish. And I keep holding up the advanced reader copy. I should probably get a real copy here. But anyway, so it's my very first book. I grew up in Kokomo, Indiana, and that's where I live now. I'm actually just about 45 minutes north of Indianapolis. You've probably never heard of Kokomo. You've probably heard the Beach Boys song Kokomo. But I guarantee you Kokomo, Indiana is anything but tropical. The only waves around here are waves of grain. And so I grew up here and I was always sitting under the Rose of Sharon tree in my backyard. And I was always reading, writing, drawing, and listening to music. So I'm the total arts girl. And I thought I would be an artist who illustrated books and then did a little bit of writing for them. Think picture books, right? And so I was in all of the advanced art classes. I took private art lessons all up through 10th grade. I was known as the art girl. And then, I grew up in a rural school. I went to the same school corporation from K through 12. And we had one art teacher for 7 through 12. And I did not like her. And so I was just like, no, I've got to drop art. I can't stand this woman. And so I dropped art and took creative writing because I thought I'll pick up art back in college. And so I took creative writing. And the very first assignment was to write a poem. And the creative writing teacher, her goal was to get us published, if at all possible, at least, somewhere, somehow. So she entered our poems in a contest at Indiana University, and mine won something. I have no idea what it was. But anyway, everybody was like, oh, Lisa can write, because no one had ever seen my writing. I've been writing my whole life, but I'd never shared my writing. And they're like, you're good at art, but you're even better at writing. And so we think you should, kind of change the trajectory there. And so I did. I studied journalism. I told them I want to write books. And they're like, yeah, you can't write books when you're 18 and 19. You got to cut your teeth in some kind of other writing first, which I would reverse that. If I could reverse one thing in my life, it's one thing I would reverse. I would have just started writing books when I was 18. But, hindsight 2020. And so I studied journalism, and I was a journalist for way too many years. I was a writer, editor, and managing editor in Indiana and Texas. And then I transitioned out of journalism into marketing, and I'm the director of marketing for a public library in Indiana. And but my desire to write a book never went away. And so when I was trying to decide what would be my first book, right? Because every writer I know has about at least 10 unfinished manuscripts, because they're always starting one, then starting another. And I was like, which one of these do I really need to focus on and make it my first? And I thought it has to be Starfish, because that is the book that I needed when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, I was fat. I'm still fat. And I was bullied relentlessly because I was fat. I still get a lot of bullying, quite frankly, even as a grown up, just by strangers saying mean things and doing mean things. And some family, but that's why I'm estranged from my family. So I was always, when I was going to the library, and I was a huge library person. If you read Starfish, you know all about Mrs. Poshine, my elementary school librarian. She's amazing. And so I was always going to the library. I was always buying books from the Scholastic Book Fair. I was always going to my public library, and I could not get enough books. But I was always looking for a book about a girl like me, who was fat, who was being bullied relentlessly because she was fat, who had all of these emotions going on inside of her because of all the bullying. And I was hoping that I would learn how to deal with all of that, because I had no idea how to navigate that, and to get the bullying to stop and to deal with my emotions. and I was really hoping, my real hope was that book would also say, hey, you're okay just like you are. And I never found that book. And so when I sit down to start, okay, I'm going to start my book writing career, I was like, this is the book I have to write, because it still wasn't around, which shocked me, quite frankly. And I wasn't sure how to write it, because my writing process is a little different. As you can tell, I'm a little different. And that I get like these video clips in my head. So if you think of like Marvel video trailers, right, to Marvel movies, and they'll show one where just kind of quickly you get a glimpse of what the book's about, or you'll get a movie trailer about one character, or you'll get a movie trailer about like one of the key conflicts in the book or something like that. So that kind of happens with me. I get these like what I call movie trailers in my head when a character is coming to me with their story. And that's really how I see it. And I know it sounds a little hokey. I mean, I'm not... If I wasn't a writer and an art kind of girl, I would be like, what? Story people are coming to you. What are you talking about? But anyway, and I'm trying to find the, just as a confession to all librarians, I dog ear books. So yeah, I'm that girl. I don't do it to library books though. So I don't get punished. But I have several that I have, here it is, that I have ready. But so I was, one of the first movie trailers I got when Ellie came to me to tell her story. And I think Ellie came to me to tell her story because her story was so much like my story. And so then I just used a lot of what happened to me personally and my personal emotions to tell her story. But when the first like video trailer I got in my head of Ellie, she was in a swimming pool. And so I knew it had to be in like a warm environment, or at least it had to be in summer. And she's like really angry. You could tell by like how fiercely she was kicking and how fiercely her her hands and arms were hitting the water. And she did that for quite a while. And then she's floated. And then she had this like really pensive look on her face. And I'm thinking, why is she so upset? What has happened? What happened before this swim scene that made her so upset? And what is she thinking about? Like, what's going on internally inside of her? And then all of a sudden, while she's floating, she spreads her arms and legs out. And I thought, why does she look like a starfish? Because that's the image that kind of looked like to me. And I thought, why is she looking like a starfish? And and she got a smile on her face. I was like, what does all of this mean? And so when these little video trailers come to me, these movie clips, I just start asking myself questions like, what does it mean? And I start it's like putting a puzzle piece of that. I can't talk. A puzzle together, pieces of a puzzle together. And so this is the poem that came from that video trailer. So you can maybe see how it connects in my mind. I'm a starfish. When I get back home from Diana's boutique, I try something new. The pool's always been my escape, the place I feel weightless in today's fat, obsessed world. I swim each morning and try to hold on to that feeling throughout the day. But by the time school's over, I feel every pound plus the added weight of shame from all the comments and pranks. The pool helps wash it all away. Now I want the pool to be something more, not only a place to escape, but also a place to express myself. As I float, I spread out my arms and my legs. I'm a starfish taking up all the room I want. And that's sort of like when she just starts having a little bit of a change in how she sees herself and how she sees who she could be and how she sees her situation. So I think that's one of the first thing that came to me was because she, that's, a pivotal moment for her. And so what I do is, and by the way, I'm not the only writer who does these video clip head things. It's not everybody does it, but Linda Mullally Hunt of Fish in a Tree does it. So now I feel like totally legitimized by it. Because I was telling Nancy Polson, my process, and she's like, oh, Linda Mullally Hunt does that. And I'm like, yay, because if she does it, then I am golden. I am normal, or if I'm not normal, I'm at least a writer. And so anyway, these scenes come to me. And if you think about them, if you think about those little movie trailers, they really lend themselves to poems and verse, first of all. But also, when I was writing, it just was not coming in prose. And when I first started writing it, I didn't realize I could tell a story in verse. I didn't know that was like allowed. And now I know that you can do anything you want. But I was raised on reading so much prose. But the first book I kept just writing them. I just had all these series of poems. And then I would periodically take a poem and try to make it into prose. And I would hate it. And I would like, nope. Delete. And I was at a bookstore and I picked up Sonia Soanes's book, Stop Pretending: What Happened When My Big Sister Went Crazy, which I love and I recommend highly. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is how I can write a book. And then I read every free verse novel I could get my hands on because I wanted to understand, where I could go with it. But I think the reason I'm drawn to, first of all, I'm drawn to what I would call my brand would be more like tough topics. I have had a lot of really bad things happen to me in my life. My dad died when I was 13 months old. I'm a survivor, which I won't go into tonight because I don't know the age of the audience, but I'm a survivor and other things. And so I am, and then having been a journalist and covering, murders and all kinds of things like that, it gives me a different level of awareness of tough topics and how people endure them and survive them and overcome them. And so I kind of see that as my brand. And so one of the things that, if you think about that with verse is I don't know, I always try to do this and I'm not very good at it, but you can see, there you go. You can see all the white space there is around a verse novel, in a verse novel. And I think that when you are tackling, I think that verse is so suited to tough topics. Think of Ellen Hopkins, right? And I think it is because, first of all, tough topics are about getting down to the heart of the matter and not a lot of the, like what I call flowery details that sometimes come in prose, where you're talking about, you spend 2 pages talking about the wallpaper. You know what I mean? And not that that's bad. I mean, I read books like that all the time. But I'm just saying that when you're tackling a tough topic, which I dare you to say that 3 times fast because I can't do it. But when you're doing that, you really want to get down to the heart of the matter. And you don't want to clutter the person's mind because they're going to have a lot to deal with emotionally anyway. And so I see verse as sort of like the skeletons of a story. And so that you can see the heart right away and you can see the emotion. And then all that white space, I feel like it gives you emotional breathing room to deal with the emotions that are involved. And so that's sort of my process and how I came about with that. And people always say, I always tell people anyway, Ellie got the watered down version of my life because I originally wrote it in YA. And then Nancy asked me to rewrite it into into middle grade. And then that's why we kind of laughed when won the Printz, because she was like, you wrote it in YA and I made you rewrite it to middle grade. And then you won a YA award. She goes, it's just was destiny to, it was funny. But anyway, so, but I think that the reason I did it in YA to start with was because it was even more intense bullying and more bullying. The subject matter of the bullying would not have been appropriate for middle grade. Let's just put it that way. And so I stripped it down to middle grade, which I'm so grateful for that decision because middle grade is when you're usually bullied the most. And Nancy was saying that. She goes, you know what? If we leave it YA, it's a great book. It'll still sell. But you know what? You're going to get the kids in upper high school who are going to go, yep, that happened to me. It was horrible. It's going to be like a book of reminiscence. Whereas if we do rewrite it to middle grade, she said, you're going to reach the kids when they're being bullied the most or when the bullying begins. You're going to give them the tools they need to deal with it. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, toes crossed, you're going to reach some of the bullies and make them think about what they're doing or stop. And I'm like, I'm in. And so I always tell people that everything that happened to her happened to me in one way or another. And that some of the things people say are like, there's no way the restaurant scene happened. And if you haven't read the book, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to make you read the book to know what the restaurant scene's about. But that's really one of the ones that's really straight from my life. And the only difference was that in the book, Ellie's dad defends her. Well, first of all, I didn't have a dad to defend me. And second of all, my family took it out on me. They were mad at me that it happened. And so that was when I was 12. And I never, for the next 6 years, I never went out to dinner with my family. And yes, I was worried that, strangers would treat me like that again. I was more concerned about how my family would react. And so I would either just eat at home while they were eating out or have them bring me something or eat leftover, whatever, because it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth risking them not being there for me when I really needed them. So a lot of people go, none of this would happen. And I'm like, no, this is what happens. And I'm not saying that this is every fat person's story, but every fat person I've read have said, yeah, that happened to me. This happened to me. Oh, and something similar happened to me. And so I think that it is sort of an eye opener for people who have never been fat to understand what happens to fat people and how they're treated by society and even by their own alleged friends and alleged family. So that's kind of how that all came about. And and I feel bad because I know you guys had Elvis last night. And I'm like, I feel like I should sing or dance, but you don't want to hear that. Because I played the clarinet forever, but I don't anymore. But I can't sing worth crap. And so, but I feel like following Elvis seems like a Herculean task to do.
We saw, one of my coworkers was showing me the tweet that you sent. We all got a big kick out of that. I don't think it's probably the same audience.
Well, that's good. Then I don't feel
sense of humor.
But you can ask me questions, and I will warn you. I am always honest with my answers, and sometimes that kind of throws people off. But I'm not. I don't know if you've figured it out, but I'm just me. I'm not.
Well, that's good. That's the best person you can be.
Yeah.
All right. Beth is going to join me again.
Yay.
I see a couple of comments.
Okay.
I actually don't see comments. I mean, yes, comments. Well, no, maybe. Oh.
In the chat.
Yeah.
I see one from Gail, and yes, the writing was painful and yet therapeutic. Yes, it was very painful. I did something that, my therapist, I didn't consult my therapist before I did this. I probably should have. But I in the writing process, I actually went to the school where I said it was K through 12. So it's in just two different buildings and they're right next to each other. And so on a Sunday afternoon, I sat in the parking lot and I would look at the playground, I'd look at the gymnasium, I'd look at the cafeteria, I'd look at different rooms, just from the parking lot. And I would remember everything that happened. And that was probably not really the healthiest thing to do. But it helped me really get in touch with how that felt. And my goal was to be authentic. And I'm always trying to be authentic in everything that I do, not just in my writing. And I felt like I had to dig up those emotions and face them again so that I could help the reader understand.
I'm going to let Kristen read that. I mean, I have a question from one of our colleagues.
Okay.
Actually, straight. She actually handed it to me on a book jacket or book, whatever these things are. Is the mirror behind her the mirror that Catalina gave Ellie?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Can you see? I apologize for the flowers. You can see more the mirror, but my O-ring, for the lighting, when I do a zoom, it would blind you. I had to quickly learn that I needed something there to keep the glare from coming right back at you. But yeah, so I never had a mirror from the time I was in sixth grade until I was I had my own home and had my own home for a long time. I never had a mirror other than the small round compact that came with my powder and my blush, because of the things that my mom used to say. She'd say stuff like, when are you going to lose that weight so I don't have to be ashamed of you anymore? Things like that. And when we would go clothes shopping for school stuff, she always started at the section where, I should have fit in because of my age, when I just needed to move down a few racks to the bigger clothes just because of my size. You should shop by what fits you, not by how old you are. But I think I think it was her misguided way to try to motivate me to lose weight so I could fit in those clothes that all the other girls my age were wearing. And so she would pick all these clothes out that we knew weren't going to fit. We'd go to the dressing room, and God all help us. And I would like to have a one-on-one talk with whoever designed the mirrors in a dressing room, because they make everybody look so, and so she'd stay there and she would make comments about my body. And she'd say, don't you want to be pretty like all the other girls? And so I got to where mirrors were very disturbing for me to look at, because every time I looked in one, I heard everything she ever said about my body. And so I just got to where I just used this little round, they're about yay big, mirror. And then I thought, you know what, I've got to make peace with it. And so that's the first mirror I bought. And it's a Mexican tin with Talavera tile. And then I bought a full length mirror. But yeah, so I think that when I created that, and I was trying to think of how to explain to people what it's like to look at yourself in the mirror all the time when you have been bombarded with all of those thoughts about your body and that shame about your body, and how difficult mirrors become, and what a gift it is when you can finally look in a mirror again. So yes, that's the mirror that inspired that.
All right, let's see. Tanya here says, we have teacher book club at my school. Starfish is our February book. We are meeting tomorrow to discuss the book. So tonight's timing is perfect. That's
Yay.
Wonderful, Tanya. You will have a lot to talk about.
Thank you for doing that.
And Suzanne says, if you write in the context of a movie, going in your head, do you have a soundtrack in mind for Starfish?
I do on my website.
Oh, okay.
Whenever I'm writing a book, I create a playlist on Spotify so that that helps me get into the characters' heads and helps me stay in the theme of the book. And so on my website, under the resources link, you will find a link to the Spotify playlist. But if you think the number one song I probably listen to way too much, because it's so stuck in my head sometimes that I can't get it out, is Brave by Sarah Bareilles. And what was so cool to me was I heard the song before I saw the video. They starfish in the video. Like they literally Starfish in the video. So find it and watch it, and you'll see how perfect that movie. So if there were a soundtrack, it would definitely be, Brave would be the song for that.
Wonderful. Okay, let me see here. Shelley says, so brave to share and let others into that pain, to let them know they are not alone. And I love that song.
It's so good. It's so good.
Okay, let's see. Let me go back up top here. Thank you. Yeah, Gail, I think this is what, thank you for giving us an honest story and hope for all through difficult real times. Lisa asks, do you dream the trailers at night when you're sleeping, or are they daydreams?
They're not really even daydreams. They're just, this is going to sound weird to try to explain this. I just all of a sudden see them, right? So I don't know. I guess the best way to explain it is my brain, my daily life would be what my brain, okay, if I had to make an equivalent, what is going on in my daily life brain would be like a television show, right? You have all these characters, whatever. But the movie trailers kind of become the commercial interruptions, where all of a sudden it's just there and you kind of are forced to watch it. And the thing too is they don't repeat. So I really have to pay attention when they come, and they don't come in order. Like I keep wanting to give me the very first trailer for like the very first poem, please, and then give me the but it doesn't happen that way. And I don't get a trailer for every single poem. I mean, I do a lot of them, but the others I'm like, okay, I need to write these to create an understanding of what's going on, or I need to write another one just to enforce this character or whatever. So I don't get one for everyone. But if I did, I'm waiting for a full-length movie in my head. It's not come yet.
Let's see. Gail says, sounds like your writing was both painful yet therapeutic for you. I would agree. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Let's see here. Do you have other books and stories in the works? Anything you can share?
That I can share about. That's the thing. No, every writer I know always has a billion books they're juggling. And it's sort of like one of those things where and I'm not kidding, I've done this before. I was halfway done with another YA novel when I was like, no, this can't be the first one. It has to be Starfish, no matter what. Even though it was like really pressing in my head, I was like, nope, got to set it aside. So I still have it, and it's like almost done, but I haven't gotten back to it yet. And it is YA. So I'm trying to stay at least my first 3 books in middle grade before I move around a little bit in the genres. But so yeah, I have a lot of books. My second book, Nancy, is editing now. And then my third book, for Nancy, I am writing right now. But I can't talk about them really yet because they haven't officially been announced at all.
I understand. Yeah. Lee writes, are you going to write a sequel? Which is one of the questions I came up with. I thought perhaps another book about Ellie or Catalina. And I don't know, I reread the book, Enemy Number 3. I don't know if you named him.
I didn't.
So I thought he could be, I really liked his story and would love to hear, maybe his background, because I thought they had a connection when they were meeting in the library, and an understanding of each other.
That's the word I was going to use, was understanding. I mean, even though what he was doing was wrong, she finally got it, why he would do it. But so the very first school visit I did, the very first question was, is there going to be a prequel or a sequel? And I laughed, and I told the little boy, I said, I'm not laughing at you because that's a great, great question. I'm laughing because I am such a dork. I never even thought about it. because I am not, I read all of the Hunger Games, right? And there are some other books that are kind of series that I have read, but I'm not really a big fan of series. That's just not, it's not my thing. Because I always feel like one of the books is the best, and you should have just had it in one of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I never thought about it. And but everybody wants to know that. And so I started thinking about it. And then I had the most interesting comment from a boy that normally it's not like my target audience for Starfish, right? He was a high schooler. He was not fat at all. And he had taken a Starfish like nobody's business. And his librarian couldn't figure it out either. She was like, really, there's like no visible or obvious like why he would connect to that. So who knows? I don't care. He did. So, but he was like, and so since he was so engaged, it was amazing. I was like, who do you think the sequel should be about? And he said, Viv. I was like, oh, I like that. Because, right, that's kind of like the anti-Ellie story. Because, Viv was fat just like Ellie. But she had a mother who accepted her how she was, and she felt totally different about her body. And so I don't know. I kind of really like that. And I don't feel like Catalina is the second person that everybody wants me to write about. But I feel like her story is an immigrant story, and I'm not an immigrant. My grandmother was, but I'm not. And I don't feel like, I'm really a proponent of own voices. And I feel like that there are so many immigrants who could tell an immigrant story so much better than I. And then the third is enemy number 3. And there was one little boy or girl. I get confused after all these different visits, but one child, let's put it that way, who was like, I want it to be like a YA novel, and I want them to get together as boyfriend and girlfriend. And I was like, ooh, because I mean, in my mind, I know who I based Enemy 3 of, and I'm like, oh no. So I'm like, no, we can't do that. But I will tell you a little hint in that. The thing about enemy number 3 is he faced poverty, right? Because he was on scholarship to this school, and he had the shoes that were falling apart and all that. Book 2, as currently written, because Nancy is editing it, so who knows what will end up being. But as written, it's about poverty and children who raise themselves, which I felt is a little like enemy number 3's story without actually telling enemy number 3's story. So if all that makes sense, that's the answer to that question.
Thank you. Let's see. How much time do you spend writing on a daily basis?
Okay, so I have a full-time day job. So when I get home, I write unless I have like an event like tonight. So on the weekdays, I write anywhere from like 2 hours to 4 hours, or I revise during that time too. Most of my writing, because of my day job and also all of the marketing of Starfish with events, comes on the weekends. And I am a marathon writer. I write 8 to 12 hours on Saturday and Sunday. And a lot of people are like, how can you do that? But you have to remember, I was a journalist for years. And so I wrote 8 hours a day at a time for a stretch. And like if there was a blizzard going on, they call you into work as a journalist. They don't let you stay home. If there's a tornado, you get called into work, you know what I mean? And so on those days, you're working 16-hour days or whatever. And so I'm used to that. But that's kind of how I do.
Okay, let's see. Another question is, if you sold the rights and turned this into a movie, who would you cast?
No. No idea. Can I tell you something? And that is, a lot of people keep saying, when's it going to be a movie? Well, first of all, I don't have any say so over that. But I did keep movie rights, right? When you're doing all that contract stuff, I did keep the movie rights. And so, people want it. There's been a little bit of talk about it, but what people don't get is how long it will take, right? Because like even if someone wanted to make it, then they've got to find a producer. They've got to find the money to raise it. You know what I mean? There's all this. And then they've got a cast. And here's the thing, you know, you got to think about this. You would want Ellie to be a fat child. And a lot in Hollywood, in the acting world, there's not a lot of fat children because there's not a lot of fat actors because it's not allowed, because it's not acceptable, because that's how our society is. You know what I mean? How it goes. And you really wouldn't want a child in a fat suit, because fat suits in general are very offensive. So there's a little bit of a, how do you do that? How do you find a fat actress who's that age? You know what I mean? And so there would be all kinds of issues to address, which would not be anything that I would have anything to do with. But what's interesting is I do periodically get child actors like following me now. And you can tell like their mothers and their, you know, caregivers are like the stage moms, and they're trying to kind of get my attention. It's the weirdest thing ever. Every time I get it, I'm like, talk to my agent about it. Cause I'm like, it just seems a little odd to me. You know what I mean? It's weird.
There's another question. I just want to ask one of my questions.
Yeah.
Ellie had very strong female role models or women to help her. Dr. Wood, Mrs. Boardman, Mrs. Pashan, is that how you say it?
Pashan.
And did you have, you said that your family was not supportive and was the cause of much pain in your life. Did you have strong women at school, friends, mothers, like Vivian's mother, that helped you and helped you get through?
Yeah. A matter of fact, I had very few men in my life, And so I had, and you know, my mother was just like the mother in Starfish, but she was very supportive of my writing, my art, and my music. And so it was really like living on a teeter-totter, right? Because she would give me all this kind of praise for my writing, my art, my music, and then nothing but criticism about my weight and my body. And so it was just like, emotionally, it was just very maddening to live under that. But she was a very strong woman because my dad died when she was 35. So she was a widow at 35 with 3 children to raise on her own. And so she was a very strong woman. And her first job was when she was 8 years old. She was a coal miner's daughter. She grew up in Appalachia, and one of 12 kids. Her first job, she was 8 years old, and she took care of an entire family, cooking, cleaning, washing, everything else when they had mumps or measles or something like that. And all the money, of course, went back to the family to buy coal to heat the house, kind of stuff. And so she worked from the time she was 8 until she was, I think, 72 or 73. And she's just a very, strong woman, very strong woman of what she endured. And then I had an aunt who, when her husband was in the military, stayed with us when I was little. And she was a very strong woman. My grandmother was from England. And if you knew my grandfather, you would know how strong of a woman she was, because he was Archie Bunker with no redeeming value. I always explain it that way because, Archie Bunker eventually learned his lesson, No. And so the fact that she even survived around that man shows her strength. And and Mrs. Pochon, fascinatingly enough, she was Canadian. So she had a very strong Canadian accent, but she had served in the military as a woman in World War II. And so she was like, I've always ended up with these very strong women in my life. And it has made me very independent, probably maybe too independent, because I have a hard time ever. Well, I never ask for help, period. I never do. Me.
All right. We have Sky says, Lisa, I wanted to see you because I was hoping I would hear Ellie in you, and I totally do. I'm a middle school librarian, and when I share this book with kids, I tell them that this is a book about a girl who was relentlessly bullied even by her own mom, and yet she has such spunk, humor, and coolness that she turns the whole thing around and finds a way to not just cope, but to turn things around completely. You will love her. Can you talk about this balance between humor and poignant, even disturbing elements of her experience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for saying I'm cool. Because I'm a dork most of the time. I would think that you read these quotes and you listen to songs and stuff, and I keep hitting the 0 button. So if all of a sudden in the chat you see a bunch of zeros, that's me accidentally. I'm so sorry. And you hear them about, there's no, the sunshine after the rain, kind of all those like very trite, what I call trite sayings, bumper sticker slogans. But I really think that's true. I think that, the horrible things that happen to us, and we all end up having horrible things happen to us. You don't get out of this life alive, right? That's what everybody says. I think, though, that when you've been to those kinds of depths of despair and darkness and whatever and battle, I think that you learn to take the humor where you can get it. And you also learn too, humor can help you survive it, right? And I think that's sort of my my own life way of doing things. I mean, I was voted best sense of humor in my graduating class, and I was second for class clown. And a lot of people thought of it as, oh yeah, it's because you're fat and jolly, which is like, don't even go there with me. But I think it's just because, when you learn to cope, you learn to take your moments of joy wherever you can get them. And I think that with, you don't know it's morning until you've been through night. Right. And so I think you just take it where you can get it. And I think that's where it comes from.
Okay. Let's see. Rasa says maybe the sequel should be about Marissa the bully. Enemy number one.
You get I don't know if you guys have any like prizes to hand out, but that Rasa gets the prize because no one has ever suggested that. And that's an interesting, excuse me, I hate coughing. That's an interesting concept though, really. Because you have to wonder really what's going on in her. Because I always tell people every time I do a talk on World Read Aloud Day, and I did all of those, I always tell people, if you don't remember anything about my talk, I want you to remember this, and that is, if you've ever been bullied, if you're bullied or now, or if you're ever bullied in the future, it has absolutely positively nothing to do with you. And I know that sounds like, what? That's like, what? Wait, what? And it's hard to wrap your head around. But healthy, happy people do not go around hurting people. They do not go around making other people feel bad about themselves. There's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with that bully. Something has happened to them. Something is going on inside of them. And they are making other people miserable out of their own misery. And they are hurting other people out of their own hurt. And so if you can remember that, it's not going to make bullying better. I mean, it still hurts. But it helps you separate the fact, it helps you keep from thinking that there's something wrong with you that needs changed. Because that's what bullies make you think. They make you think that there's something wrong with you and you need to change, when really it's all about them. And I wish I would have learned that when I was younger. Yeah. But, the fact that I learned it at all was a good thing.
Yeah, it would be something good for everybody to learn at a young age. A couple people have asked about the significance of the jars behind you with the paper. What can you tell us about that?
Here's a secret about me. I'm a shopper. I love to shop. Okay, so I had found this jar years ago, and but I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I just thought it was a cool jar, and hence my shopping problem. And so when I started getting emails from people, or like I got my, Starry Kirkus review or whatever, I was like, oh, I want to hold on to that. How do I hold on to that? And I was like, oh, I can print it off and put it in that jar, right? And then I didn't think anything of it. I thought, I'm being 100% honest. I thought the jar will never get full, but it'll be cool. And then the jar got full. And so I had to buy a second jar, but I couldn't find one like that. It's been a while. And so I bought a different one. And I have a third one. You might be able to see the top of it. It's on the floor. I'm running out of room. And it's over halfway full. And I've got a ton of stuff to print off. And once I print it off, it'll be over full. And so I'm like, okay, I either have to buy a bigger place or I should find a new way to preserve that, right? Plus, I don't want to kill a billion trees. But what I do with it is when I'm writing, you always get to that point where you're like, oh my God, if I rewrite this poem one more time, I'm going to throw my computer out the window. And because you're just wanting that right word or that right tone or that right, it's really hard. And I look over at my jars and I'm like, you know what? You figured it all out once. You'll figure it all out again. Keep going. So I call them my inspiration jars. I don't know what else you want to call them, but that's what I call them.
Well, I'm thinking bucket filling, not bucket spilling. So those are all things, right? That positive things that have filled your buckets or your jars.
Yeah, and what I love about it is some of the kids I've done author visits with, the teachers love that idea, and they'll get them little jars, and then they create their own, and they'll do like, hey, whenever you win a music award or whenever you get a good comment from a teacher, fill it in there. And so I like how it's kind of inspired others. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely. That's wonderful.
And see what shopping paid off.
Let's see here. How long did it take you to write Starfish? I know you said you have a full-time day job.
Yeah. So when I was writing Starfish, it was a little complicated. Life was a little complicated because I was working my full-time job. And then I was taking care of my mother who had Alzheimer's. And then she was in a near fatal wreck. And her other daughter was in with the wreck with her. And so I had to take care of them for 8 months while working, while writing Starfish. And then, so if you had to add up the time I actually got to spend on it, about 8 months. But there were lots of breaks in between because, when I was working 40 hours a week and taking care of them 16 to 24 hours a day, because on the weekends it was 24 hours a day. So about 8 months. But my second book took 6. And my goal is to do a book every 6 months. And I'm really hoping that one day I can do a book in 4. Just because I eventually want to just be a full-time author, and you need to be able to crank them out. But if I was able to quit my day job, I would have 40 extra hours a week to write. So I think I could eventually do that. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was math. And I want some applause for that because I'm an artist and I don't do math. It's funny because at the library, finance is like, oh no, Lisa's doing math again. Let us do that. Let's us, when I'm doing my budget for the year, they're like, let us do that. Let us do that.
Let's see. Shelley writes, I love the idea of the inspiration jars. That's awesome. And Lee says, I am amazed with your generosity towards family. And I would agree.
And what I have to say, I love children because they are so blunt and so honest. Because I think it was the second or the third author visit I ever did. A little boy said, why in the world did you take care of your mother after she'd been so mean to you? and I'm trying not to laugh and encourage, you know what I mean? But I told him, I said, how she treated me is on her, but how I treat her is on me. So that's how I think of it. But yeah.
Right. And that's evident in the book with Ellie and enemy number 3. Mm-hmm. He did not treat her kindly. And then when she saw him, she kind of hid out of the way. So he could get his new shoes and new clothes and have that moment be about him, which is because your spirit coming through there.
Exactly, because that's why I also did the where they work together in the library poems, was because I wanted her to understand him better. I wanted him to admit who he was. Basically. And I wanted him to see that she had this human side as well, that she just wasn't Splash or an elephant or a whale, all the things he called her. But I think what I really wanted with the scene where he's picking out free clothes at the mission is I wanted people to see, especially children, that you always have a choice in how you treat people. No matter how they've treated you, you always have a choice of how you treat them.
Right.
Yeah.
Important.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I think I have another question or two. How did you choose? You said your father passed away when you were quite young. How did you choose to include Ellie having a father and then Ellie's siblings, which her mother and sister sort of came around at the end, but I don't think Liam, her brother, there was any awareness that he was going to change his perception of her. How did you choose to write those characters or make those choices?
Yeah, my dad died when I was 13 months old. So I only have one memory of him, which is really bizarre. And it's of seeing him in the casket. So weird, right? But so yeah, I had no clue of what a dad was like. My mom never remarried. And so that's and again, what I'm talking about being a very independent woman. But so I chose the dad I always wish I had. And so there was a gentleman in my life, and he's from Texas, and he grew up on a ranch, and he has that really good Texas accent, which I cannot even try to imitate. And so I will not discredit the entire state with that. And he was just a great guy. His name is Phil Montgomery. And so then he became like my inspiration for Ellie's death. And then the sister was based a lot on my mother's other daughter, and the Liam was based a lot on my mother's son. But neither one of them ever changed, which is why I'm estranged from them. But I wanted to show that people can at least try to. I think for Anais, I think the sister, I think she'd finally realized that what bullying was doing to Ellie and how bad it was, and how even if she didn't, like, she wasn't as bad as Liam, but she never stood up for Ellie, was the same thing, right? You're responsible either way. You're responsible for what you do, and you're responsible for what you let others around you do. And I wanted that because I think in life you have that. You have people who finally get it and they start to change. But then there are people who don't. And I think that needs to be, again, to be that authentic story I was striving to tell. I had to keep that authentic. Some people, well, you can, they just want to change. And, I always think back to that little boy in the restaurant, because like I said, the restaurant scene was real. And I always think about that little boy that this dad coached to come over to our table and say that I was fat and ugly. And I think, where is he now? Did he ever change? Or is he like the dad teaching his son to be like that? And so I wanted to show that that's how life is, that some people learn from what's gone on and some people don't.
Very good. Let's see. Lee says, I was a nurse. After this call, turn on a
Humidifier.
Yeah, turn on a humidifier, breathe some moist air. Thank you for your perspective.
And thank you for that tip. It's good because I'm so much better than I was, but I spasm after talking for a while. But yes, I have to admit, I keep my heater really high, which I know is not helping my bronchitis at the moment, but I can't stand to be cold. So like I had my heater on 80.
Oh my.
So yeah, I really need to get out that humidifier, but I haven't done it. But I will do that, Lee. I really will.
Thanks, Lee.
I feel like my grandmother has just said, wow, which is a good feeling, actually. It's really nice.
Yeah. I am a grandmother, Lee says. So
that's where you go. Because I had the best my father's mother was the best grandmother ever. So yeah.
No, thank you so much, Lisa. I think we went through all the questions.
yeah, I think
Woohoo!
unless anybody pops another one in there real quickly, we'll say thank you. And it was lovely to chat with you.
Oh, I had so much fun.
Thank you for sharing your story and Starfish with us. It's just so beautiful.
Yes.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It really was.
Hopefully it inspires many people to be kind and generous and think what they're saying and how it can be hurtful. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of good.
Yeah, we definitely needed a little bit more of that in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's
It was
do
so
our
nice
thank
meeting
you.
all of you.
Great.
And thank your Susan, I think, is the one, right, who does your social media?
Yes, Suzanne.
Suzanne.
Well, Suzanne, there we go. We had this huge exchange like on private message because we had a great time joking around. It was great.
Oh, that's shocking.
Because I was sharing with her that here's my sense of humor. If you might already figured it out.
You see, I'm here.
Yeah, Suzanne's listening. So
Oh, there you go. I'm here. I'm laughing.
she's
So-
the one who asked about the soundtrack.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I had, have you ever seen those signs that say life's short, lick the bowl? Mine is not in the kitchen, it's in the bathroom.
We're in New Jersey now.
And so it's in the bathroom on the toilet. And so people walk into my bathroom and they're like, oh, Lisa. That's me right there. Right there.
On that note.
Okay, yes, we'll wrap it up there.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It was so nice meeting you. You guys have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yep.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.